The police lights painted our quiet suburban street in red and blue, flashing against the snowbanks like a warning I never thought I'd see outside my own home. My 14-year-old daughter stood at the end of our driveway, hands trembling, tears freezing on her cheeks as two officers moved toward her. One of them said the words that made my blood run cold. "You're under arrest." They had no idea who I was. And they had no idea who she really was either. My name is Daniel Mercer. To my neighbors in our small Ontario town, I'm just a quiet widower who works long hours and shovels other people's sidewalks when the snow gets too heavy. To my daughter, Emily, I'm just Dad. The guy who burns pancakes on Sundays and pretends not to cry during her school concerts. But what no one on that street knew was that I'm a U.S. Marshal on special assignment, working cross-border with Canadian authorities on organized crime investigations. I don't wear the badge at home. I don't talk about the cases. My job is dangerous, and I made a promise to my late wife that I would protect Emily from the darkness of my world. That night, the darkness found us anyway. It started with a knock on the door just after dinner. Emily had been quiet all evening, scrolling on her phone, looking worried. I assumed it was school drama. Teenagers live in storms of emotion. I never imagined the storm was about to become real. When I opened the door, two local officers stood there, faces stern. They asked for Emily by name. My heart skipped, but I stepped aside and called her to the hallway. They said a local electronics store had been robbed earlier that afternoon. Security footage showed a teenage girl in a red parka acting as a lookout while two masked boys smashed display cases. The girl in the footage looked like Emily. Same height, same parka, same long dark hair. Emily shook her head so hard her ponytail whipped across her face. "Dad, I was at the library. I swear, I was studying for my math test." The officers exchanged glances. One of them held up a still image from a phone. It was blurry, but the resemblance was enough to make any parent's stomach twist. "We have a witness who identified her," the officer said. That's when I noticed the small detail. The girl in the photo had a small star-shaped scar near her eyebrow. Emily didn't. I kept my voice calm. "There's a mistake." But the officers were under pressure. The store owner was furious. The suspects had gotten away. They needed someone to bring in. When they stepped toward Emily and asked her to turn around, I saw something I will never forget. Not fear of punishment, not guilt, pure betrayal. She looked at me as if the world had suddenly become unsafe, and she didn't know if even I could fix it. And that broke something inside me. I told the officers to wait. I asked them if they had a warrant. They said they had probable cause and could bring her in for questioning. Legally, they weren't wrong. But morally, they were rushing. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Before you do something that will follow this girl for the rest of her life, you need to be absolutely certain." One officer sighed. "Sir, if you're hiding something." "I'm not hiding anything," I said quietly. "But you are." They frowned. I pulled out my wallet and showed them the badge I never carry unless I have to. U.S. Marshal Service. Federal Authority. Cross-border Task Force clearance. Their posture changed instantly. "I'm not using this to intimidate you," I said. "I'm using it because I know how investigations work. And this one isn't finished." The senior officer swallowed. "Marshal, we didn't know. You weren't supposed to," I replied. "But now you do. And I'm telling you my daughter didn't do this. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I asked for the evidence. The full footage. The witness statement. I requested to see the timestamp." While they hesitated, Emily stood behind me, still shaking. I could feel her breath hitching. In that moment, I wasn't a lawman. I was just a father standing between his child and the weight of the world. We went inside. They showed me the footage on a tablet. I noticed something immediately. The robbery happened at 3:42 p.m. At 3:39 p.m., I had received a text from Emily. A photo of her math notes with a frustrated caption, "I hate fractions." The image metadata showed it was taken inside the public library. GPS coordinates embedded. I handed them my phone. Then I called the library. The librarian confirmed Emily had signed in at 3:10 and left at 5 o'clock. There were cameras there too. The office's confidence began to crack. Still, one of them said quietly, "The witness was sure." "Witnesses can be wrong," I replied. "Especially when they're scared." I asked to see the image again. That's when I zoomed in. The scar above the eyebrow. The subtle difference in nose shape. The parka wasn't even the same shade of red. This girl, I said, tapping the screen, isn't my daughter. There was a long silence. The senior officer finally nodded. We'll need to verify this. Good, I said, that's all I'm asking. They left with apologies that sounded stiff but sincere. The flashing lights disappeared from our street, and the night grew quiet again. But inside our house, nothing felt quiet. Emily collapsed onto the couch and started sobbing. Not the soft tears of a teenager upset about homework. The kind of sobbing that comes when your sense of safety is ripped away. They thought I was a criminal, she cried. Everyone saw, the police, Dad. The neighbors saw. I sat beside her and pulled her into my arms. I felt her shaking against me. Listen to me, I said softly. What other people think doesn't define who you are. The truth does. And the truth stood up for you tonight. She looked up at me, eyes red. You were so calm. I almost laughed. I wasn't calm. I was terrified. That was the truth. I've faced armed fugitives. I've walked into drug houses not knowing who was behind the door. But nothing compares to watching your child almost get taken away for something she didn't do. A week later, the real girl was identified. She had been pressured by 2 older boys. When the news broke, the same neighbors who had whispered offered awkward smiles and overfriendly waves. But something had changed in Emily. She held her head higher. She volunteered to speak in class about false assumptions and how quickly rumors spread. She even joined a student committee focused on fairness and accountability. One evening, as we washed dishes together, she said, Dad, I think I learned something. What's that? That being innocent isn't always enough. Sometimes you have to be brave too. I smiled. That's something it took me years to learn. She paused. Were you scared they wouldn't believe you? Yes, I admitted. Power doesn't guarantee justice. Persistence does. She nodded thoughtfully. That night, after she went to bed, I stood by her door a little longer than usual. I thought about how close we came to letting fear and assumptions take control. I thought about how many families don't have someone who knows how to navigate the system. Being a U.S. Marshal isn't about the badge. It's about protecting the innocent, even when the innocent is your own child. When those officers tried to arrest my daughter, they didn't know who I was. But more importantly, they didn't know who she was. Now they do. And so does she. In a world quick to judge and slow to listen, sometimes the strongest act isn't flashing authority. It's standing firm in truth, staying calm in chaos, and reminding the people you love that their worth isn't decided by accusation. That night, the flashing lights left our street. But the lesson stayed in our hearts forever.